for that. Um,
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, one of the Career Readiness Consultants with the Kent Intermediate School District, and I am so excited to welcome Holly LaBeff. She is a digital media coordinator, and she's going to share her career path and insights about her career with us today. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you, Krista. Hi, everybody. As Krista said, I am the digital media coordinator at Grand Rapids Art Museum. And I realize that title is a little ambiguous, so I always follow it up with a few examples of what it is that I do at the museum. So my job entails photography and videography, as well as social media and our website. So all kinds of digital media wrapped up in that. And I will talk a little bit more about my daily job life and some of the types of tasks that I do in a little bit.
That's great. Well, let me ask you a question to get started, because I know that young people, Molly, always like to know if adults were thinking about this career back in high school. So when you're in high school, did you think you'd grow up to be a digital media coordinator, or did you have other things on your mind?
Absolutely, yes, I did. I feel very fortunate and very lucky to have my true dream job. I always knew I was going to be a photographer. So that's what my degree is in. That's what I knew I wanted to be when I was in high school. And it was kind of just figuring out if I wanted to be an art photographer, meaning like printing out the photos and putting them up on a gallery wall, or more commercial. And I've kind of blended the two. I photograph a lot of artwork that other artists have made, and I do some like marketing and advertising style photography as well. So yes, I actually did know that that's what I wanted to be when I was in high school.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, because they sometimes talk about how jobs that kindergartners today are going to have may not even exist. And so I laugh because I'm old enough now, Molly, that your job was nowhere in even potentially going to be happening when I was in high school. So it's so great that that job was there, you knew about it, and here you are today. So you ended up going off to college because you had this interest in photography. And was that hard to pick your college? Help young people understand how you even navigated choosing what school.
Great question. So I went to Grand Haven High School, and they had a really great photography class there, a couple classes that you could take. So I made sure I took all of those first off, and I made sure I was spending extra time in the dark room, getting extra help from the teachers when they were available. And when it came to choosing a school, I talked to my teacher about putting together a portfolio in which schools were going to be, like what kind of portfolio review process there was for each school. And I looked into Grand Valley, and I really liked their style of program, because other than like different from like a Kendall or an art school, their program for photography was in the communications, under the communications umbrella. So it wasn't, the portfolio review wasn't necessarily to be like a fine art photographer. It was more focused on marketing and advertising and communications and things like that. So that seemed like a really great fit to me, where I could hone in my photography skills, but also keep my just kind of keep it broad, to make sure that I would have a lot of job opportunities when I came out, and I wouldn't just have to rely on being able to sell artwork someday. I think that's great. A lot of people do that career path, but I know for me, I wanted to make sure that I had that kind of broader scope. So I chose Grand Valley.
I think that's like the best tip of the day already, Molly, is that you took the time to research the different school opportunities for you and found one that fit you. And again, you didn't go so narrow that you really only would have had a choice to be a photographer in the narrow sense, but included it in that advertising and marketing. I love that. And I hope young people are hearing that, because I personally didn't even really realize that was a way to do it. So I'm learning something too already. College, was that very hands-on for you? Did you continue to build your portfolio in college? Did you have an internship? Tell us some of those steps in college.
Yes, great question. So I ended up double majoring in advertising and public relations and photography. Again, just to make sure I was, had that safety net. I knew photography was what I wanted to do, but I knew that those two majors also would go really well hand in hand. So I'm trying to stay on topic of your question, but something I really wanted to do, since Grand Valley was under that communications umbrella and didn't focus so much on fine art, and I knew that my dream job was to work at an art museum, I really made my education work for me. Like I molded a lot of my classes, a lot of my required classes that I had to take. I was knocking on my advisor's door every single semester, asking them, I want to change this up a little bit. I want to go to the art school in the art department in the other building, and take classes there, not just do commercial, not just do ad PR. So I was always kind of, I think one tip would be to be prepared to kind of like make your case for like why this is going to be relevant in my career, why I want to take classes that maybe aren't necessarily in the like just the defined lines of what the major is or isn't. And I found like being passionate and being interested in that and going to an advisor's office and saying, hey, please let me take this other class and swap it out for maybe this class was required and I want to take a different one instead. As long as you have like a case to state, they were always really willing to do that for me. And if you're going to college, you're paying so much money and you want to get out of it like what you need and build something around your interests. So I made sure that I did that, and I I'm really glad that I did.
If I could interject right there, because I think for some young people, we think we have to do it what the college is telling us to do for our majors. So again, just great inside scoop for this, Molly, that you can advocate for yourself, like you say, knowing what you want to do and making sure those advisors are hearing you. Love that. So you really already knew that you wanted to work in an art museum, and you're tailoring your degree, keeping it broad enough that you have some options. Tell us what some of that next step was. What was that transition for you from college to the work world?
Yeah. So I think one big important thing for me that bridged that gap was the kind of student that I was in school. I was a very pay attention student. This is like a little trick that I read online, or that my older brother who went to college before me gave to me, which was to sit in the front row of class during lectures, even when you don't want to, even when it's a gen ed and you're not interested. Sitting in the front row meant that I wasn't going to be scrolling on Instagram during class, or back in my day, it was more Facebook, but just making sure that you were going to be engaged, making sure the professors saw you were engaged. And I also, this is another reason why I think it's really important to choose something you're genuinely interested in doing. I ate it up. I did all the reading. I did, made sure I was doing extra credit. There was an extra credit field trip to Grand Rapids Art Museum that I took, full opportunity of that. And I was, making sure I was in extra lectures or my teacher's office hours and things like that. So I kind of built a professional relationship with those professors. And that was absolutely instrumental to me getting a job in my field, because from there, those references, those connections, it was the wife of one of my professors who first employed me and gave me my first job out of college, because he knew what kind of employee I was going to be, because he knew what kind of student I was. And I remember him making the comment like, Molly was the only person who did the required reading. And it seems so simple, but just being interested and intrigued by what you're studying, it just makes all the difference. You don't want to read something that you're not interested in. So that kind of set me apart and then bridged the gap between college and my career. And now I still have those friendships and working relationships with my professors, and they're peers of mine, which is really exciting. So we see each other and kind of like partner with each other between the art and education community. We attend one another's events and just like continue that working relationship, which has been really great.
I think that's so important. We try to mention in career chats, skills like networking, and oftentimes we'll hear, what you were doing was already a live interview. Like people were paying attention to who you were, and it certainly paid off for you. And I'm thrilled for you that all that hard work and intention led you to your dream job. So networking, talking to people, making sure they know who you are. And as you're looking for work, then obviously your professor knew and helped make that connection. So what was your first job, and what do you remember about that? Do you remember like having it all figured out? Did you have to like learn a lot? Help people understand that you don't know it all first when you get started, even with that college degree.
Yes, 100%. So my first job out of college was a job at Amway, world headquarters over in Ada. And it was in their world marketing department. And so I was doing a lot of photography, learning some graphic design skills on site. And another thing, kind of going back to what I said earlier about switching classes, and some class I wanted to take, and I would have to, fight for my, with my advisors on that. One of the classes that I opted out of was a studio photography class, which now looking back, I really wish I would have had that in school. And so that was, but even though I didn't, that was something that I learned on site at Amway, with just like a colleague of mine that kind of took me under his wing and taught me everything he knows about studio photography. So I definitely was able to make up for those skills in the field and learn new skills. I definitely didn't have it all figured out. Still at Amway, I wasn't entirely sure where I wanted to go with that, but it was a nice place to figure that out for sure.
Yeah, I want to normalize that because I think sometimes young people, when they look at adults, right, they like, how did you learn all that? How did you know that? And it's so important for young people to know that it's a gradual thing. It's life. You're learning new things all the time, especially when you're engaged in asking questions. And I'm sure that's why that colleague took you under his wing, because he could see that you were eager to learn. So I love that. So how long did you work there? And then what was your next transition?
Yeah, so I worked at Amway for about a year and a half, and I relentlessly refreshed the Grand Rapids Art Museum's career page until the opening came. And this is important. I shouldn't have skipped this. Fresh out of college, the job that I have now was open. And so fresh out of college with no experience, I applied for it. I wanted it so bad. I really went above and beyond and took extra photos. I kind of did like a photo shoot that they didn't ask me to do and submitted that. And I didn't get the job. Somebody else got it. They liked his experience a little bit more. They liked his technical skill a little bit more. So then I went to Amway. And so while I was at Amway, I was still just waiting for this job to open up. And then when it came back up, I applied again and was just like delighted to see a friendly face. The same woman was still our HR director. Got to see, some of the same colleagues that I have now. And it was like a really nice, friendly, like, hey, remember me? Like, and it just showed like, I really want this job. I'm not just looking for like any old photography job. So I think that was, enticing to them. And of course, here I am now. What was your question? Sorry.
Well, no, you answered it. You did great. But again, for young people to hear that it's not a passive thing. If you have something you want, you have to be intentional. And again, you kept your eye probably stalking that website a little bit, but that's okay, right? And that's how you knew it popped up. And so again, I want to help young people understand that that's how job search works. You have to be looking. Everything doesn't show up on Indeed.com. You have to be going to the websites of the companies that you would like to work with. Yes, Indeed.com is a tool, or LinkedIn is a tool, but go to where you want to work if you have a dream place. So what was that like when you got the job? Just tell us what that was like for you.
Really, really exciting. And it still is. I mean, I've been here for almost 5 years now, and I still like wake up every day excited to go to work. So yeah,
I know oftentimes I mentioned this to you before we got started, that a lot of young people who are creatives and they're artistic, they themselves wonder if they can make a living with that skill, and their parents are often wondering if they can make a living with that artistic skill. Tell us your story around that.
Yes. I was just telling Krista before this presentation started that it wasn't so long ago when I remember the hesitation in my parents' eyes when I told them I wanted to study photography. That might have been a little nerve-wracking for them just because they wanted to make sure I could go find a career. And so that is one of the reasons why I double majored in advertising PR, and I still use a lot of those skills in my job today, more than I ever thought I would. And secondly, especially when it comes to photography, I'll speak just to that because it's my experience. Every single company on the planet needs photography for something, whether it doesn't have to be like, whether it's an ad agency or, some sort of like a specific industry. So if there's an industry you're interested in, they're going to need photography of something. So once I kind of walked, my folks through that and talked about that, and we looked on Indeed.com, definitely sat down with my dad and looked at Indeed to make sure that there were openings for that. And even if like freelance is also a great option. I have a lot of peers and friends of mine who do freelance graphic design and photography, and they kind of have like their steady clients, so they kind of find their niche, whether it's wedding photography or events or things like that. So I think, yes, there's a ton of opportunities for that. And I will say, I do think it's important to first look if there's something you're interested in and passionate about. It is good to just check and kind of look on Indeed or a tool like that to make sure that there will be opportunities, not to go so narrow that you kind of limit yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to go into a job that's declining per se.
That's right. That's right.
So help us understand what a digital media coordinator does. Give us a typical day
Yeah.
over there at the art museum.
Yeah, so I am in a very small but mighty communications department. We have a graphic designer, we have a communications manager, and then we have a communications assistant. So just the four of us, and we serve as, I like to call us, a little mini ad agency for the entirety of the museum. So the museum has advancement, which is like donor relations and development. We have curatorial, which is the art that hangs on the walls itself. We have membership, special events, the museum store we used to have. So all kinds of different things. So there's really, I know this, you probably get this a lot, but no 2 days are the same, honestly. We kind of have like cycles that follow our exhibition cycle where we have patterns that ebb and flow. But also, I think, apart from just my job and just what I do in photography and in my communications department, I think Graham, and I think certainly other employers do this as well, just does a really great job of seeing if someone's interested in something and intrigued by something, even if it's not within that job description. If you show a passion and a curiosity, your colleagues will teach you their new skills, and you can I've found that some of the most fruitful projects I've done here at the museum have been kind of elbowing my way into other things. So I've learned how to handle artwork. I've learned how to do a little graphic design from my colleague Brian. And also, I just kind of started weaseling my way into more of the curatorial field. So just this upcoming next month, and actually it opens, I'm looking at the calendar, it opens next week. I've curated my first art show of all photography by local Grand Rapids artists. And that's something I don't have a degree in, didn't have the qualifications for, but just through learning and through doing it in my career and learning from my colleagues, I've been able to do it. And it's intensely exciting. It's probably my most exciting career feat yet. So
Well, and that's the wonderful thing, right? Because careers evolve. If you talk to most adults, they're not doing what they thought they would do when they were 20 years old. It's changed, it's evolved. I'd love that you are continue to seek new ideas and new opportunities and learning new skills. It's just inspirational, Molly. Thank you for that. What would you like young people to know about what maybe your least favorite part is? Because I do want to give them maybe the other side.
Let me think about that.
Molly's like, I'm in my dream job. There's really not a lot of downsides.
Yeah. So I think one of the most challenging things for us here at the museum is that we are we are a small team. So we do have to get a lot done with little. And so I'll say my biggest flaw in a career too, is that I am like a yes person. Like, I have big ideas, my colleagues have big ideas, we're all creative thinkers, and we all want to say yes to everything. And we just can't. Like, there are only so many of us, only so many hours in the day. So I think that is always a challenge, is to prioritize like what really needs to happen and what can we maybe put on the back burner or say maybe someday, or what can we make a case for by saying like, we need to hire someone because this is really important and integral to who the museum is as an institution. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, is making it work with what you have.
You've done a great job kind of helping young people understand some maybe steps to get to where you are. If a high school student is taking photography classes or doing some of that, is there any other opportunities you would want to see them doing in high school to kind of prepare their way to head down this path? Anything that they should know about that maybe you would have done different or that you've learned since might be good for high school students to do?
Yeah, I think one really important thing is to just kind of like learn your craft and kind of do research on like, who are the greats, who came before you that's doing this, who do you really look up to in your industry, whatever it may be, whether it's art or medicine, whatever. And kind of having like the context of what kind of career you want to go into. I think that's important. And also, I think just like really setting yourself apart with your like passion and drive. Like, you can learn new skills. I think people could just like see I think it's important for people to see that you are like a teachable person. Even if you don't have all the skills, you don't bring everything to the table right away. I think people see when you're eager to learn. So I think just kind of setting yourself apart by doing the above and beyond is important as well.
Oftentimes in schools, Molly, students have to learn what they call soft skills or life skills, things like teamwork, communication, flexibility. What are some of those skills that you want to encourage them? This is why they're teaching it to you young people. We do use this in my day job. Anything come to mind?
Yes, two things that kind of go hand in hand. One is how to kind of compromise and come to a common conclusion with your team members and teammates, and hearing different input, hearing different perspectives, and kind of bringing that to a final decision together. And secondly is to be able to back up your ideas when you do have a different perspective, or when you have an alternate idea to something. Just be able to kind of advocate for yourself, and back up your ideas. And I think also when it comes to like career moves, like making upward trajectory in your career, that's again where advocating for yourself is going to be really important. That's really not, I think this is pretty universal. Nobody really is going to, people can support you. I mean, my colleagues, my directors, my leadership are amazing and they support me, but I still do need to advocate for myself. This is why I want to take on this project. This is why I think I should get a raise, things like that. Like those are scary conversations to have, but if you just have like a sort of like logical explanations for things, I find that to be really helpful in those conversations.
It's great wisdom from you, Molly. Thank you so much. In the Grand Rapids community, do you have any other like associations, or I know it's with COVID, it's a little challenging, but do you network with other people in your similar work? What is the community like in your business?
Yes, absolutely. So the museum is very focused on community partnerships. There are so many that we have around the community, and we're always like wanting more and looking for more. Another thing that we spread this across the board at Graham. So we don't have a specific community outreach person or manager like you might see at a larger museum. So it really is on all of us to find the connections in the community that we find to be meaningful, and we find to be genuine and natural, and just partnering with them and saying, hey, I work at the museum, you work at Grand Valley, or you work at Disability Advocates of Kent County, places like that maybe you're passionate about or interested in. So yeah, making those connections kind of falls on all of us across the board. And we also make sure, like as a team, to try to attend things. This is more pre-COVID, but things like the creative mornings. Those are really great networking events. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's a nationwide kind of program where they do once a month in bigger cities like Grand Rapids is a mid-sized cities. They do these little like coffee and breakfast, and then someone gives like a 30-minute lecture about what they do in the creative field. So that used to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing those in the future.
Yeah, I point that out because I think when I was younger, I didn't realize that there's a human resources association and there's an association for the local, contractors and construction folks. And so there's these networking opportunities, everyone, where you can be with your peers, bring in ideas, find out about new opportunities. And so I just wanted to put that out there. I'm going to pull up that screen for a great resource that you shared with me as far as some of the salary and opportunities. And that was, go ahead. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. This is a website for the Association of Art Museum Directors. And there's something, or AAMD, there's something that my colleagues and I are kind of marking ourselves against when we talk about salary and salary range, which I think is really important. And I think that more and more companies are kind of moving toward that transparency of listing salary ranges. That tends to break down a lot of barriers and pay disparities in whichever industry. So this is a handy dandy thing that we use called the AAMD salary survey. So Chris is going to share this with you at the end, so you can look at it more in depth, but it just details out by all museum sizes, by region, and then by job title and job description, and gives a salary range for each and every one of those. So you can go look on here and see like what does a photographer or digital media coordinator is kind of a conglomerate. So I'm not technically like one thing on here. We all kind of piece things together, but you can see what does a graphic designer at a museum in New York make versus in California or the Midwest make. So I think that's a really great tool to use to kind of benchmark and just make sure that you're being fairly compensated. So I think Graham does a great job at that. We use this for all of our salaries. So
yeah, I think that's great for the counselors who are on the, watching this today or watching this recorded to know as another resource to give their students who are interested in these careers, even just to glean what some of the job titles are, right? So fantastic resource. As we finish up, I wanted to just kind of get an insight, because I think it's important for young people to understand that, like you said, all companies need photographers, all companies probably need a social media person. What is so great about the art museum field in general? Why was that your dream job? I'm curious.
Yeah, I just love to be around the artwork itself. That's some of my best and most favorite days at work is when I get to be around the artwork, when I get to photograph it, when I get to go see it on view. And now, of course, finding ways to curate a community gallery exhibition. And it's really nice on days when, because all job has, busy times and times of stress. And on days like that, when I have a lot on my plate and I just need to decompress, it's really nice to just be able to walk into a quiet, tranquil gallery and just like enjoy the art there. So yeah, it's a dream.
That's great. Because I try to help young people understand, if you love sports and maybe you don't have the physical, skills to make it to the pros, they still need people who work in the sports industry, whether it's an analyst, it's a photographer, a media, whatever. So I guess I want young people to hear that find what you love and there's jobs that make it happen. And so
yes,
I love, Molly, that you're just a perfect example of that. You wanted to be around the art, and so you found a job to be around the art. That's fantastic. Want to give us a final word of wisdom as we approach 4 o'clock here to these young people who are exploring careers and their counselors who are assisting them?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really do think it's important to find something you're passionate about, even just like Chris has said, if it's something that maybe seems unattainable, there is a way to be around it. And then secondly, to just continue to learn. Learning absolutely does not stop when your education is over. So much of my enriching learning has come from being at a job and also just keeping curious. If you're curious about someone else's job, go talk to them about that, learn from them. I pester my colleagues all the time about, teach me how to do this. And that's gotten me, to some really exciting opportunities. So that's my little words of wisdom.
It's gold. I mean, absolutely gold. You've been a great role model today, Molly. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to share with the young people and their counselors and parents, hopefully, are watching this about your field.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Oh, and please share my email if anyone wanted to reach out to me afterwards or had any more questions. You're more than welcome to do that.
Absolutely. I'll put that in the chat right now.
Thank you.